December the 17th, 1916, St. Petersburg, Russia. Γκριγκόρι Ρασπούτιν, self-styled mystic and confidant to Tsar Nicholas II, is fatally shot. His Russian assassins fear Rasputin's control over their ruling family has gone too far. The facts of Rasputin's murder have been largely unchallenged for almost a century. But secret documents now suggest he had other enemies who wanted him dead. So who else was present on the night of the murder?
What we now know about the plot effectively changes the perspective that's been given to us for the last 100 years.
Reinvestigating the official autopsy photographs and using advanced ballistic testing to unravel who really held the smoking gun, we open the mystery files on Rasputin. Tsar Nicholas II is on the throne of Imperial Russia. The Romanov dynasty has ruled for 300 years. Nicholas's empire spreads from China in the east to Germany in the west. In the capital, St. Petersburg, the Winter Palace is the seat of their power. The Tsar's German wife, Tsarina Alexandra, has 5 children, 4 girls and a boy, Alexei, the youngest and cherished heir to the throne. But behind closed doors, the imperial couple hide a dark secret from their subjects. Alexei is born with a disease that threatens the dynasty. Hemophilia is an inherited condition in which your blood does not clot. 100 years ago, it is untreatable. One bad knock, and Alexei could die. Historian and author Helen Rappaport explains the family's plight.
He was a little boy. He wanted to be like ordinary little boys. He wanted to run around and play, and he was very closely watched. But even so, there were occasional times when he banged himself. This poor child is in excruciating pain.
To protect public confidence in their line of succession, the Romanovs keep Alexei's illness carefully concealed. For support, the Tsarina Alexandra turns to the Orthodox Church. She is a devout believer, but it can't heal her only son.
The obsession with producing a son and heir was so consuming that it was, in a way, quite understandable that she should be equally obsessed in keeping him alive and would turn to a man like Rasputin.
On November the 1st, 1905, into this state of private desperation, enters Γκριγκόρι Ρασπούτιν, a mysterious peasant-born faith healer from Siberia. Historian Charlotte Ziepvat is an authority on Russia's royal family.
Around the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, there was a huge appetite in St. Petersburg for spiritual experience and spiritual stories. And it's this void that he steps into.
With his seemingly mystical powers for faith healing, Rasputin has recently become the sensation of Russian high society. Brian Moynihan is an expert on Russian history.
He arrives in St. Petersburg like some great medieval rocket from the past. He would go to these salons where they would all be drinking tea and it would all be very respectable seeming. And he would entertain them with stories of Siberia and stories of peasants, because they'd never met a peasant before.
In a letter, the Tsar writes, "A few days ago I received a peasant from the Tobol province. He made a remarkably strong impression on Her Majesty and me."
Nicholas and Alexandra are very impressed with Rasputin. They like him when they first meet him. In time, he is invited into the Alexander Palace to meet the children.
This is Alexander Palace, 25 kilometers south of St. Petersburg. It is here that Rasputin is first asked to perform a healing for the imperial family. Rasputin prays over the young prince, and the boy relaxes. He sleeps peacefully, and when he wakes the next morning, the pain is gone.
He clearly had some kind of incredible suggestive powers. It's never been explained and probably never will be. I mean, he had some kind of mesmeric power.
This proved to be something that Rasputin could respond to, that medical science couldn't.
In the Tsarina's mind, Rasputin can work miracles.
Rasputin is called the mad monk. He was never a monk, and he most certainly wasn't mad.
Rasputin lives in this modest apartment in central St. Petersburg, just a few streets from the Winter Palace. His increasing involvement with the Romanovs persuades the Tsar to allow the Okhrana, Russia's infamous secret police, to monitor Rasputin for his own protection. Under the Okhrana's watchful eye, Rasputin receives visitors from every walk of life: churchmen, nobility, military officials, all seeking an order from Siberia. But the most frequent visitors are the opposite sex. This photo of Rasputin surrounded by admirers is reproduced in its thousands.
Rasputin, without question, becomes a superstar. He was a man of prodigious character, huge energy, in many ways very enlightened and humane and sympathetic and kind. In others, I mean, a heroic womanizer.
Rumors of what goes on in his apartment are soon the talk of Russia.
Wherever there was an opportunity, he would take it. On trains, during tea parties, you name it. If there was a possibility, he was there. He is, as it were, a bit of rough for a certain type of Russian lady.
Speculation over Rasputin's debauched lifestyle escalates into the ultimate public scandal, an alleged affair with a Tsarina.
It was very widely believed throughout Russia, and it did her reputation enormous harm. It was dragging the imperial name into disrepute.
A crude cartoon depicting their supposed tryst is widely circulated.
Yes, last but not with the Tsarina. There was no question she was his meal ticket. With her, he was at his holiest, his most moral.
This intimate photo shows that despite the innuendos, Rasputin is still trusted by the imperial household.
He was their only ray of hope. I really don't think they cared that he was grubby and smelly and had a reputation for being a drinker and a womanizer. The fact was, this man could help their son. Nicholas actually said at one point, "I'd rather have 10 Rasputins than one of Alexandra's screaming fits."
But to a skeptical aristocracy, Rasputin appears to hold the royal family in a strange, hypnotic grip. His influence over the Romanovs is even openly debated in Parliament. In one speech, Rasputin is denounced as a filthy, depraved peasant. The Empress listens to him too much. And now world events bring Rasputin into conflict with other powerful forces. In 1914, Europe is engulfed in a brutal war. Russia allies with France and Britain in a savage struggle against Germany's military might.
Initial military successes were followed rapidly by absolute disasters, by a breakdown of morale.
By the end of October 1915, the war had taken a terrible toll on Russia. Approximately 1.5 million soldiers are dead or wounded. Rasputin, a man committed to peace, allegedly urges Tsar Nicholas to withdraw Russian troops and consider making peace with Germany. It's now that Rasputin's leverage with the Romanovs attracts the attention of the British Secret Service. Based at their headquarters at the Astoria Hotel in central St. Petersburg, British agents are increasingly anxious to gauge the stability of their Russian allies. This is One Whitehall Court in London, England, headquarters of the British Secret Service during World War I. Historian Andrew Cook has been permitted to re-examine secret files and correspondence.
British intelligence were aware from the word go that Rasputin was one of the leading people of influence in Russia who was actually arguing in private for an independent peace deal with the Germans.
In the winter of 1916, Germany is fighting on two fronts. In the west are the French and British lines. In the east, the Russian army is engaged in a series of ferocious battles.
If the Russians pulled out of the war, this would be a fatal turn of events for Britain and France because, according to Britain's own calculations, it would have taken the Germans 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks at tops, to totally overrun British and French positions on the Western Front.
With Russian internal security and now the British Secret Service mistrusting his motives, Rasputin's life is on the line. But history records that it is a member of the Romanovs' disgruntled inner circle who decides to bring Rasputin's involvement in Russia's affairs to an end.
Prince Yusupov is the scion of one of the richest, oldest families in Russia. He's an Oxford-educated fop.
People like Yusupov, old school, top-drawer aristocracy, couldn't bear what was happening.
Felix Yusupov certainly saw Rasputin as an obstacle to Russia's recovery in the war. It was really that crucial to him that Rasputin be physically removed from the equation.
On December the 16th, 1916, Yusupov lures Rasputin to a party at his palace here on the banks of the Moika Canal in St. Petersburg. Knowing Rasputin's weakness for women, Yusupov has promised the self-styled holy man a meeting with his wife, Princess Irina, a prominent society beauty and the Tsar's niece. In reality, the princess is not even in the city. The trap is set. According to accounts written by Yusupov, Rasputin begins to enjoy his hospitality. But instead of Yusupov's wife, hidden away upstairs is a group of men. Among them is Vladimir Purushkevich, a well-known politician, and Dmitry Pavlovich, a member of the imperial family. Two other unidentified men are also among the guests in the palace. Unknown to Rasputin, these men are conspiring to kill him. Yusupov offers Rasputin some cakes, but they are not coated with sugar. They are laced with potassium cyanide.
He's supposed to have eaten the poison and not been affected.
It has since been suggested that the would-be assassins fed Rasputin poison, which was out of date and harmless.
According to Yusupov's version, when the poison fails to work, it's then decided that there's no alternative, he'll have to be shot.
At around 3 o'clock in the morning, Yusupov makes the critical move. Yusupov returns to his conspirators to report that Rasputin is now dead. But later, when the prince checks on the body, Rasputin suddenly revives enough to grab him by the neck. Yelling for help, Yusupov breaks free. With seemingly superhuman strength, the holy man attempts to escape across the courtyard. Then, from distance, one of the conspirators, Purushkevich, takes aim.
His shots hit Rasputin in the back, and his second shot, according to his own account, hits Rasputin in the back of the head.
Finally, the gentlemen assassins have finished Rasputin off. Wanting their victim to disappear forever, his corpse is thrown into the icy waters of the nearby river. But his body is found, Not far away, near the Petrovsky Bridge. The police investigation into the murder is brief. The Tsarina places Yusupov under house arrest, but the prince denies all involvement. Yusupov is never charged. Rasputin is first buried, then his body moved. In transit, it disappears and has never been seen since, leaving no physical evidence. The prince and his conspirators have seemingly got away with murder. This is the accepted story of Rasputin's final hours, based on two of the killer's recollections. But Yusupov's is written 11 years after the event.
Yusupov's account is essentially modelled on a Gothic horror story, in particular, the story of the beast that will not die.
The true extent of the brutality of Rasputin's murder has only recently come to light in a long-forgotten autopsy report. Stored deep in the Russian archives are a unique collection of photographs taken in the immediate aftermath of the murder. Unpublished at the time and held in storage for over 80 years, they show the crime scene. They show a courtyard with fresh blood drops in the snow. They show Rasputin's frozen body in the minutes after it is dragged out of the river, and they reveal in graphic detail Rasputin's autopsy. Across his body are bruises and bullet wounds. One that appears to have been fired into the front of Rasputin's head from close range and not from behind, as the assassins claimed.
According to Purishkevich and Yusupov, the head wound was to the back of the head and fired at a distance.
Leading forensic pathologist, Professor Derek Pounder, has gone back to the archives and studied the original autopsy report of 1917.
When I first saw the Rasputin photographs, I was really surprised that they existed. There's a shot to the center of Rasputin's forehead, and this is a typical coup de grace shot. In other words, the final shot to finish someone off.
Purishkevich's account, and indeed Yusupov's, simply do not add up once you actually look at the autopsy evidence.
Professor Pounder decides to re-examine the physical evidence to establish if the bullet was actually fired from close range. Purishkevich claims to have killed Rasputin with a Savage pistol. This pistol fires the same bullet, a .32 caliber round, at the same velocity as the assassin's Savage. An animal skin is set up against a block of gel. This is specially designed to simulate the physical density of a human body. An ultra-high-speed camera will capture the moment of impact.
We can tell the distance of shot by the presence of the soot and propellant.
The bullet is fired from close range. The round penetrates.
And if we look at the bullet hole, no soot and propellant residue, and just a small, thin, black bullet wipe at the very margin of the wound.
Professor Pounder establishes that the wound in Rasputin's autopsy photograph is not from a long-range shot.
It shows clearly that the fatal shot was actually fired from the front, was fired at point-blank range. Effectively, the assassin would have placed the gun directly between Rasputin's eyes and pulled the trigger.
But there appears to be another crucial difference thrown up by the photographs.
When we examine the forehead wound, we see that it's a larger wound than would be expected. It's about ½ an inch in diameter.
From the photos, Professor Pounder calculates that Rasputin's wound is bigger than usually caused by the .32 caliber pistol Purishkevich carried.
That then begs the question, if it wasn't a weapon fired by Yusupov and Purishkevich, what kind of weapon was it? What kind of weapon could it have been?
It's comparable to one produced by a .455, a Webley revolver. The Webley revolver is a British Army design from about 1887. At the time of the First World War, when Rasputin was killed, it was issued to most officers.
The British-made Webley fires large-caliber unjacketed rounds of solid lead. The Savage pistol fires smaller caliber jacketed rounds where the entire bullet is encased in copper. Unjacketed ammunition was banned in 1907 because when it hits the target, instead of a clean entry, the lead distorts and releases energy on impact, causing more collateral tissue and bone damage. To make a comparison, the scientists test-fire the Webley's lead round from the same close range that the fatal shot was apparently fired.
When we compare these test shots with the gunshot wound to the center of the forehead of Rasputin, what we see is something very similar to the Webley shot.
It appears that not only has the pistol not been shot from long range, but the wound was not caused by the smaller caliber pistols carried by the assassins.
The forensic and ballistics evidence does not match the accounts by Yusupov and Purishkevich. It then begs the question, if they didn't fire the fatal shots, who did?
One theory is that Dmitry Pavlovich, one of the conspirators, carried a large caliber pistol and so fired the fatal shot. But Yusupov and Purishkevich both testified that Pavlovich had left the building before the incident occurred. This is where the plot thickens. Attention turns to the two shadowy figures who were also present that night. Their identities have never been established. Evidence has come to light that points directly to one Oswald Rayner. Rayner met Yusupov while at Oxford University 7 years earlier.
Rayner, in later life, actually confessed to his family that he had been present at the murder.
Further proof of Rayner's involvement in covert operations is contained in a memo between the British intelligence chief in Russia and one of Rayner's associates soon after Rasputin's body is dredged up. It reads, "Although matters have not proceeded entirely to plan, our objective has clearly been achieved." It goes on to say that the demise of dark forces, a code name for Rasputin, has been well received by all, although a few awkward questions have already been asked about wider involvement. Rayner is attending to loose ends. But one of the Russian assassins testifies that the two unnamed men are Russian soldiers.
Certainly a number of people on the British intelligence mission were actually wearing and actually had issued to them Russian overcoats and Russian uniforms.
British personnel were often seen in Russian army outfits.
To me, evidence points very strongly to the fact that there were at least 2 British officers present that evening.
Based on this theory, it is now possible to retrace the events on that fateful night in December 1916. 3 a.m., the Yusupov Palace. Rasputin is shot. The conspirators kick and beat him. His hands are tied.
It's a horrible mess. It's a case of we've got to kill this person and we really don't know how.
They lay him down, and if historian Andrew Cook's version of events is correct, the British agent, Oswald Rayner, stands over the body.
It's at that particular point that a British officer is literally forced to take his revolver and shoot Rasputin at point-blank range to be absolutely sure that he is dead.
Rayner makes no mistake.
The plot was motivated purely, I believe, by the fact that he was centrally involved in the initiative to pull Russia out of the war. British intelligence felt that the best way of removing him would be to actually have Russians themselves being seen to be the people who assassinated him.
Rasputin's murderers never meant for his body to be discovered. And it's nearly a century later that new forensic evidence reveals doubts over the possible killer. If the British intended that Rasputin's death would guarantee Russia remained an ally, their plan succeeded. But within a year of his death, Russia is plunged into a revolution, and Rasputin's royal patrons, Tsar Nicholas and his family, are brutally executed as the communist-led Bolsheviks seize control. It was the beginning of the rise of the Soviet Union and the end of an imperial dynasty, fatally weakened by an infamous Siberian mystic.